ready to kick it off with Kate Milne, and she's going to teach us about falling into intuition and courage. Kate, thank you so much for joining us, and I'll give the stage to you.
Thanks so much for having me, Cheryl. It's so great to be here. So tonight, I think we were just going to talk about some of my experiences over the last year during COVID, and just maybe what some of those things taught me.
Yeah, so why don't you give a little bit of an introduction about yourself? I could tell, but I think it's nicer when you tell your story.
Sure.
Like your background, where you're from, your mom, dad, all that.
Sure.
Your experience in Thailand.
So I'm joining you tonight from Vancouver, Canada. And I am a clinical exercise physiologist by training, but I am a healthy aging specialist. And for the last few years, I've worked specifically with women and women in midlife. So originally I worked more so with people in, up in the 80s and 90s. So what we call the oldest old. And got to work on a super interesting research project about 5 years ago. And it really inspired me to work with women in midlife. So we worked with women 55 to 70, and we just did some really simple lifestyle changes with them and had some great results. So that's been the focus of my work for the last couple of years. So I have two companies. I have one health promotion company, and I have another company called Age Sister, and that's the one where I work with women in midlife. Yeah.
You can tell about the other one as well, because I think that's really fascinating, especially as we're in this conversation, because we're going to talk a bit about pivoting and bringing balance into your life when Dawn gets started in her conversations or in her masterclass.
Sure. So my other business, Cardea Health Consulting, is a health promotion business. And not a lot of people really have heard about health promotion, or they may have heard it in a different context. But what I do in that work is I work with populations of people, big populations. So I help mainly government help people in communities, cities, provinces, right across the country get healthier. So usually around exercise, but it's everything from social health to emotional health, to mental health, to physical health. And a lot of the work that I do in that business is around a World Health Organization initiative. And that's really bringing together all those different dimensions of health to help people age better and stay in their communities as they get older.
I didn't realize you were working with who?
I don't work directly with them, but I carry out one of their worldwide initiatives. So the Age Friendly Initiative, it's taking place all over the world. And cities are just starting to reimagine what we need to keep people in place in their communities and stay healthy. So it really started off that they looked only at physical activity and they just wanted to look at active aging. And the more they went out and talked to people, they realized that there were all of these other components, that people needed to be connected to one another from a social perspective. They needed to have inclusion. They needed to have good recreational opportunities that include everyone. There needed to be services in languages, other languages than English. There needs to be good healthcare services. There needs to be proper housing. It's all based around that idea of the social determinants of health. So, a lot of times we focus on these really obvious things. So we might focus on, physical activity or helping people quit smoking or having healthy diets. But in fact, we know that a way, way bigger influence on your health and how long you will live, your quality of life, is all around things like how stable your housing is, whether or not you have social connections, whether or not you have a supportive community. Those things are so much greater in terms of the impact on our health than all of those other things that we concentrate on. And I say that as an exercise physiologist. I'm a big believer in physical activity, but I have to say that we know now more so than ever that social connections are one of the most important parts of our health and how we get older.
That is very fascinating. I could take a deep dive on that, but I don't want to derail our conversation about your topic tonight, because I want you to tell the story of what kind of happened to you and how it changed your life as a marathon runner, it's an ultra marathon runner, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always say that with a little bit of trepidation because the first thing that people ask me is why? Why would you ever run that distance? So people who maybe are unaware of ultramarathoning, it's anything beyond marathon distance. Sometimes it's 50K, 50 miler, 100 miler, multi-day events. And it's almost always on trail. So there's a really big elevation gain. So just to give you one example, one of the races I did had 16,000 feet of elevation change over 50K. So it's about a 9-hour race. So you're having lunch on the course. Yeah, but an adventure. So I am a marathoner as well. I don't even know the total of official and unofficial marathons, maybe 18 or 19 marathons. 22, I think I'm at half marathons, and then 2 ultras. And so I love the ultra distance. I spend a lot of time in the woods by myself. And sometimes I think as a woman, there's something very empowering about putting your pack on with your food and all your supplies and preparing to, maybe spend a night in the woods if you have to. Like, you have to be completely prepared from a safety perspective. And I would go off and train for hours in the backcountry in BC here. And the backcountry we have some pretty unforgiving mountain areas. There are people rescued from our mountains probably to the tune of about 2 per day. There must be 2 helicopter rescues per day from our mountains because we have a pretty active population and we have a lot of visitors, and people underestimate those mountains. So they're a challenge. So for me, the ultra running has been this kind of, I guess, self-discovery, for lack of a better term, in that spending a lot of time by yourself with your little pack and pushing your physical limits beyond what you ever thought possible is a great way to get into your brain as well. So during my training last year, well, in 2020, just after the pandemic really started, in July of last year, I was with some friends away at a friend's farm, and we decided to go out cycling. It was a beautiful day, but I did have a weird kind of hit in my stomach about it. I don't know why. There wasn't anything that was untoward, but I just felt a little funny. We were just cycling on the road. We went for a long ride, and on the way back, I had a really bad idea to take a picture of a friend who was riding in front of me. So I got out my camera, and I tend to ride my bike like I'm a 16-year-old bike courier, not super smart when you're a 53-year-old woman. And I pedaled off ahead as hard as I could and turned around with my camera, and I caught a rut in the road, and I went over the bars, and my helmet shifted. My helmet that I would have sworn up and down was fitted just perfectly. My helmet shifted and I landed directly on my skull on pavement. So pretty hard landing, tore up my shoulder, did some damage to my arm, but I gave myself a pretty significant concussion. And because I'm a very healthy person and a big believer in exercise, and because of the work that I do, I read all of the information about concussion, and I knew one of the best things I could do was to stay active. So I got back out. Just a week later, I got I started running. I was doing a lot of walks. I was, trying to take care of myself from meditation, doing a lot of mindfulness, really working on my brain health, and went out for a trail run 10 weeks later with some friends. And, I've talked to Cheryl about this. I had a night before this run, and I wasn't doing anything unusual for me. And I spent all night waking up and thinking, I shouldn't go on this run. I shouldn't go on this run. I should not go on this run. How am I going to get out of this? What can I say? What can I tell them for the reason that I can't go? And then I had a whole conversation with myself about how silly that was. And that, I was just probably a bit nervous after this bike crash. So I ended up going out on the run, and I was right at the end of the run. It was quite a long one. We'd been way up in the mountains, but we were coming out. And all I remember was looking at the woman in front of me thinking, that's a really nice jacket she's wearing. She's got this great yellow jacket on. And that's the last thing I remember. And there's about 35 minutes of my life gone. And I don't know what happened. My friends found me. I had crashed somehow on the trail, and landed on the other side of my head. So concussion number 2 in 10 weeks. Not recommended even once, let alone twice, and definitely not when you're in your 50s. It's a very bad idea. So I've spent the last year recovering from 2 mild traumatic brain injuries that have taught me a lot. One of the things I think that I took away was the idea of listening to your gut. That night beforehand, the time before I got on my bike, that feeling inside of me that said, this is a bad idea. I should have listened to that and not push through. I think as women, we tend to, like my mom used to say, we just get on, right? We just do whatever we're meant to be doing in the moment. And sometimes we can push past that. So that was one huge lesson. There's 2 other things. And Cheryl, am I okay for a minute? Your time okay? So there's 2 other things that I learned. One thing I've learned in ultramarathoning and marathoning is that you have to walk into the pain. There's no other way to get through that. You just have to walk right into it. You cannot go around it, as you can imagine. If you've been running for 7 hours and you're looking at a hill that you're going to go straight up and your legs are about to give out, you can keep going, and the lesson from that for me was when I was lying on the ground after my bike accident. I thought, you have to walk right into this. You have to walk into this and feel everything about this in order to get through it. So rather than trying to, think about how I can get rid of the pain, I think the ultras have taught me that we have to move through pain. We have to walk into pain sometimes, and that's metaphorical as well. I think we have to walk into that suffering in order to release it. And I think that was one of the best things I could have done. I could have resisted. I could have spent a long time, I was on the road for half an hour waiting for an ambulance, which was, let me tell you, a long time in that condition to be on the road, in that kind of pain. But I think walking into it was something that helped me recover. And again, I think just metaphorically, and I don't even think metaphorically, I think if we just look at how a lot of coping happens, a lot of it is turning away, right? Coping, we have addiction rates that are higher than ever. We have, folks who are struggling with eating, with not getting outside, with wanting to cocoon in their homes. I mean, this pandemic has been so incredibly traumatic for so many people. But when we turn away, it takes longer to get through that pain. So that was a definite lesson. That intuition was a lesson. And the final lesson that I would just say, and this is more from a physical standpoint, but boy, oh boy, brain health as you get older matters so much. To be in the center of feeling every feel for what affects your brain. I think we just have no idea how much stress and worry and multitasking impacts our brain day to day. When that function's taken away and you actually have to, be really aware of what's going on with your brain and trying to make your brain work, you really realize all those really basic things that we always go back to: the healthy diet, physical activity, mindfulness. Oh my goodness, mindfulness was so key. But they all do matter, and they matter beyond just our cardiovascular health and all those things that we think of normally. They really do matter for our brain and our mental health. Yeah.
Wow, wow, wow. The one thing that you and I talk about quite a bit is that the intuition side, right? Because I'm gonna take a deep dive here.
Okay.
Because of the spiritual side. Understanding it from your perspective is different than understanding it from my perspective, right? For me, it would be like, sure, Spirit, God, Holy Spirit had guided me. You got to deep dive into just the essence of energy and how you get these gut feelings, and you got to pay attention to them. Right? Because of your religious or non-religious beliefs. And so when we had the conversations around, so what does that mean, Cheryl? I found it really intriguing to be able to share, my perspective and you sharing your perspective, especially coming from the UK, right? So you want to articulate anything on that, or even tell a little bit of the story about Thailand and the experiences there, and how it just kind of opened your mind to religion.
Yeah, well, I mean, I always have to take a deep breath when I say this, especially in the context of this conversation, but I am an atheist. I'm not someone who's ever had a religion. I was not brought up with a religion. My parents were religious, but they immigrated to Canada, and they just thought, bringing up their kids, that they just wouldn't practice their religion in that setting. And so I'm an observer of religion, though. Atheist, I think, sometimes sounds like such a pejorative. It sounds like you just believe this one thing and that's it. You're not open to anything. But I am a lover and observer of religions. I spent a semester of university in Thailand, and we were all assigned in my group, so my university group, we were all assigned a topic to present on every day, to do a deep dive into. And I did a deep dive into Buddhism and got to learn all about the origins of Theravada Buddhism, and just the beautiful connection of the Thai people to that religion. Just the acceptance of that religion I found really lovely. So yeah, absolutely. I always love to hear people's stories. And like I joked with Cheryl, I always feel a little bit envious. I used to be quite fearful of flying, and I'd feel really envious if somebody had a strong spiritual belief, because I'd think they feel safe on this plane. I'm pretty sure, because they have something to believe in terms of, being supported through it. So yeah, it's interesting. Definitely open to exploring, all sorts of different belief systems, but yeah, that's where I sit.
Yeah, we have had some really fascinating conversations around religion, and so I just wanted to open that up and share, because historically, I would have been one of the people based on my religion to either walk away or try and motivate you to come one way or the other. But
Mhm.
our group, our mastermind is so diverse.
Mm.
We've got somebody from everything in there, right?
Mhm.
And I love how we can be open about it. And especially in this day and age, right? There's
Mhm.
just so many opportunities for us each to have our own belief systems and still love one another, be peaceful with one another, and not commit war and suicides and murder behind it or change your political beliefs. So
Mhm.
thank you, Kate, for that conversation. Thank you for being so open. Does anybody have any questions for Kate?
I
Just had a,
do.
go ahead, Dora.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to make a comment, like just what an unbelievable story, and just amazed at just to hear you today, even after two major injuries like that, that you've survived it. So just thank you for sharing your story.
And
Thanks
she's
so
back
much.
out there running
Yeah.
on a regular, in the rain, doesn't matter.
So my question is, and I don't know exactly how to articulate this or if it's actually a question, but Kate, do you, because you're accustomed to pushing through and training, and so you get better every time, or you get stronger every time, or every time you go out to train, or you have a marathon or a run or a hike, I'm sure there are probably these metrics in your mind that I bet I can finish this a little bit faster, or I bet I can go a little bit stronger. And how do you balance that now with your intuition? Because your intuition is, it's clearly a voice.
Mm.
And I think you have a healthy respect for your intuition, especially now.
Mhm.
So how do you reconcile that?
That's such a great question. So when I had the trail running accident, nobody knows if I blacked out. That's one of the pieces of the story. I could have tripped, but I had a very strange fall. I fell to the side, which is not typically how you'd fall. Usually you would fall forward. And so there's this kind of question mark. And so I found it really difficult at first to go back and listen to that intuition, because I would have these moments when I'd be out and I'd think, I don't feel very well. But the whole way that, as you say, you can get through any of those tough events is just to push through. You turn that off. That's the skill. And so kind of having that push and pull and learning both was a real exercise in humility that all the metrics and all the data and all the, I don't know if people know Strava, but it's a social media site where you put up your runs. And so people track them. And because I was a coach for many years, people will track my times that are posted for races. And I just had to learn to let that go. I just had to say, okay, it's better that I'm out here and I'm doing this rather than I'm, getting a certain time or being competitive. I have to listen to my body. And that was tough. That was a lesson. Yeah.
Yeah. It was interesting when you said, when you were asking yourself, well, what am I going to tell these people that I'm running with?
Mm.
And I hope you know that you don't owe anybody any explanations. And I think you can just simply say, you know what? Today is not my day.
Mm.
And, but I'm going to be taking a walk around the lake, or, whatever you pivot to,
Mhm.
and you're welcome to join me, or have a great time and let me know when you're back. But but I'm sure every run that you go on with a group of people, they're saying, well, let's go with Kate because she'll push us to work harder, to run harder, to run faster. So you're always in coaching mode, right?
Mm.
So
Yeah, it's a great point. It's definitely, that's such a good point. It's really something that I have embraced now, is saying to people, you know what, today is not the day, tomorrow, next week, all go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good lesson.
I feel like you have so much to like, whew, like that was scary. That was scary for me. I kind of experienced it. It's like, whoa, no. Yeah. So I'm glad you're here with us.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, it was an experience during COVID, that's for sure. Just a little extra for 2020.
Like you really needed something more.
Just thought I'd add that in.
But you know, for strong women, you know, we just need a little bit more to make sure we got it all, you know. That's phenomenal. Well, thank you, Kate. Are there any other questions? No? Okay. Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, Kate. I know that you are taking a step back from Age Sister. So I don't know if you have an extra special something for the Masterclass people or not, but.
Yeah, I can put up, I have a page that I'll put up just from the Masterclass folks where I have all of the resources from Age Sister. So there's some great information about home workouts, about plant-based eating. Yeah, I think there's 4 or 5 different resources that I can put up, and I'll just make that an exclusive link.
Oh, thank you so much. And you guys, when you take a dive into her content, it is thorough. It is very science-based information that can definitely influence how you live, eat, experience life. And especially for those of us that are around menopause age, it's very informative, very informative.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you, Kate. I appreciate you.
Thank you.